Have you ever heard a yogi say they eat a Sattvic diet or live a Sattvic lifestyle? My name is John Immel, and I'm the director of Joyful Belly Ayurveda. Lots of yogis try to eat a Sattvic diet because they want to be more Sattvic. They want to be more spiritual. And members of the Brahmin caste in India do this also. Actually, a lot of people in India try to live a more Sattvic lifestyle, but members of the Brahmin caste are especially expected to live this way. So what is Sattva? You probably already know that in Ayurveda, there are three body types. And those are the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Well, also in Ayurveda, a person can have a mental type or a certain mental constitution. And that's called Manas Prakriti. And this is not just in Ayurveda, but in much of Indian philosophy, and especially Sankhya philosophy, on which Ayurveda is based. And those three different mind types or mental types are called Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And the name given to those three is called Mahagunas. So you have the three doshas to describe body types, and you have the Mahagunas to describe your mental type. Sattva is the mental type that's focused on awareness, and this is the type that's considered to be the most holy type according to Indian philosophy. And I have put a picture here of a person who appears to be living a kind of Sattvic lifestyle. I see the white clothing representing purity and cleanliness. There's a lot of light in the background representing the light of consciousness. A smile to show good nature. And you see in general this person's in good health. Look at the rosiness to the cheeks. And the kind of glowing quality to her eyes all point to some aspects of Sattva, or that might lead a person to this holy temperament of Sattva. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are actually ancient spiritual terms from the Vedas. And as I said, specifically Sankhya philosophy, where yoga, Ayurveda, and Buddhism come from. Sankhya is actually the oldest of the Shad Darshan, the 6 Indian philosophies, and considered to be the most influential. And so you find this idea of Sattva all throughout Indian spirituality. Charaka, who was considered to be the father of Ayurveda, integrates this concept of the mental types, or the Mahagunas, into Ayurveda in several chapters, especially the chapter on mind. While this area doesn't represent the bulk of Ayurveda, and it's not even frequent in the classical texts, it is mentioned and referred to, and so it is a part of Ayurveda. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are actually 3 of the 24 principles in Sankhya philosophy, and you may recall this map of Sankhya, which is showing how consciousness and reality come together to form the created world. And here you see Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas is sort of getting towards the bottom of this map. And really, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas describe the different aspects of the ego or the doer. We always remember that in Indian philosophy, the word ego is not a good translation for ahamkara. Ahamkara means I do, and that's more closely related to the will, right? The will, like willpower or self-will of the person, rather than the self. The true self is considered to be Purusha. Anyway, philosophy aside, you see in this map that Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are under the ego, or under the doer, or under the will of the person. What are these different temperaments like? Tamas is inertia, dullness, sleep, and darkness. As you can imagine, not favorable in the Sankhya model because in Indian spirituality, it's all about awareness, all about consciousness, not so much about physical substance. So Tamas is about physical substance and matter in nature, whereas Sattva is more about awareness and consciousness. So Tamas is the opposite of consciousness. It's considered to be ignorance and dullness, sleep and darkness. Again, not viewed favorably in that system. Rajas is considered to be momentum, desire, and action, doing. So if Tamas is being, Rajas is doing. And I always love that phrase, be a human being, not a human doing, right? And that's a kind of, funny little spiritual quip. Anyway, a Rajasic person is characterized by passion, enthusiasm, and movement, as well as willfulness, activity, impulse, and initiative. Sattva, on the other hand, is defined as peace, peacefulness, clear, balanced, steady. And these are things that are all considered good in Indian spirituality. And there are virtues. There are objectively virtues here. Being peaceful is a good thing. Being steady is in general a good thing. Being balanced is in general a good thing, although not always. Being conscious and aware is the main goal of Sankhya. And so another way of describing these, on this map here, we have them all kind of on a single line. But another way of looking at this is that Sattva becomes aware of the impulses of Rajasic movement or Tamasic sleepiness, and then decides between the two, right? Sometimes the perfect decision is to not engage, right? To disengage. And sometimes the perfect solution is to engage. So Rajas engages, Tamas disengages. In a way, you could say this. I'm very much oversimplifying it here, but Sattva watches and chooses between the two. So in that sense, in that idea, Sattva is the organ of discernment, whereas Rajas and Tamas are actual reactions. Again, I'm taking a slightly unorthodox perspective when I say that. So, but nevertheless, Sattva is above all the drama. People who have a lot of drama and difficult emotions are attracted to Sattva. Suppose you're that kind of person who is always like having all these unruly emotions. Oh, I wish I could get over my anger. I wish I can get over my frustration. I wish I can get over my sadness or depression. I wish I can get over my worriness and anxiety. Well, if you find yourself plagued by emotions all the time, then perhaps Sattva is attractive to you because Sattva is above all the drama. And again, the way you eliminate suffering in Sankhya is by, and yoga and Buddhism, is by recognizing it's all an illusion, and that what you see is the shadows of reality, not the reality itself. And recognizing this, you rise above desire, rise above the self, rise above self-concern, and withdraw into a state of witnessing or watching. That's the general model there, and Sattva is the kind of personality that's the doorway to that style of thinking. Now, that style of thinking isn't attractive to everyone. It's not seen as enlightenment in all traditions. It's just what the Indian spiritual tradition kind of views as enlightenment. So we have to view Sattva. Remember that throughout this lecture, we'll be viewing Sattva through that lens, and you'll have to think for yourself, like, what is your lens around that? Anyway, Manas Prakruti, or your mental type, also explains how your doshas and mind are related, by the way. And this is pretty useful, actually, when you start to see this relationship, that Kapha people tend to be more tamasic or relaxed as a personality, that Vata people tend to be a little more hyper or rajasic, whereas Pitta are also rajasic, but they're more the reactive, ambitious, aggressive side of things. Each dosha has to work in its own special way towards Sattva, or if you don't follow the Sankhya model, towards holiness or, goodness, virtue. So a little more about your mind temperament or your mental constitution. And this is very powerful, I have to say, because I use this all the time in my own body and with my clients, that I will assess my clients' doshas, and then they may tell me something about their emotional imbalances, and I know the relationship between the mind and the doshas, and so because of that, I know that I can change the physical conditions of their body, and that will shift their emotions. Or the other way around, that by shifting their emotions, I can shift the physical parts of their body. And this is pretty direct and observable. This is not really a woo-woo thing or a very subtle thing. As you start to practice, you'll see that these really do, these doshic states and the gunas, heavy, light, sharp, dull, etc., all have a mental effect on Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, and you can pretty much map between the two and really help your clients if they are having trouble in the emotional realm by helping their physical body, or if they're having trouble in the physical realm by helping their emotional body. So a little bit more into it. Sankhya theory says that like increases like. It's one of the basic principles of Sankhya. So what does this mean? It means the more tamasic things you do, the more tamasic you become. The more sattvic things you do, the more sattvic you become. And this is really basic, this idea that habit has a effect on the nature of a person. And this is not just even Indian philosophy, but Aristotle in the Greek philosophical tradition, really at the roots of Western civilization, really described this similar model of habits, that a person is born with a nature, but through their habits they can influence their nature. So the rule of habit is a really important part of really both of those traditions, Eastern and Western philosophies. So, all right. The habit not only changes your physical nature, it changes your mental outlook and spiritual nature too. This is also universally agreed in many, many systems. So, any case, Ayurveda and Sankhya say that by eating things like basmati rice and a vegetarian diet, you become more sattvic. And if you eat meat and heavy sedative type foods, you become more tamasic. And if you eat stimulating foods, you become more rajasic. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard some spiritual guru from India say that they don't eat onions or garlic or tomatoes? That's because onions, garlic, and tomatoes stimulate desire. They stimulate rajas. And that leads to a person being less sattvic because they become more attached, and sattva is about being detached. There are some Ayurvedic chefs, even in the United States, that will say, don't eat onions, don't eat garlic, etc. Not just Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, but even down to the subtle levels, Ayurveda assesses the mental and spiritual effect of everything, from the sun and stars right down to today's lunch. That's why in Ayurveda there's all sorts of things like drink your water from a copper cup, or Pitta people should moonbathe, but Vata people should sunbathe, and etc. Ayurveda is always assessing the physical, mental, and spiritual effect of everything. And so Sankhya says that Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are in all objects and phenomena of the universe. So you can assess how sattvic is the sun versus the moon versus a cave versus mud versus water versus etc. And so everything has Sattva, Rajas, Tamas in it. If you know the different proportion or ratio of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas that's in whatever things in your environment, then you know how they're affecting you. That's a kind of basic Sankhya theory. All right, let's just talk a little bit about Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas in the Vedas, because all things are not created equal here. Sattva is the best. Rajas and Tamas are they're seen as more inferior, and let's just talk about how that's communicated scripturally. So here on the right, you see a picture of the Bhagavad Gita, which is probably India's, it's a holy text from India. It's sometimes considered to be the analog of the Christian Bible, or the Indian spiritual version of the Bible, their Bible. But it's the sixth book of the Mahabharata, which is one of India's most famous epic poems and Hindu texts. Scholars suggest the Bhagavad Gita was written around 200 CE. And here are some quotes about Sattva, Rajas, Tamas from that. So God is considered to have the purest Sattva, which is not of this world. When Sattva is predominant, from all the gates of the human body radiate the illumination of knowledge. All right, so pretty positive view of Sattva there. Note that Sankhya philosophy, where Sattva, Rajas, Tamas come from, there is no God. Sankhya is an atheist, more specifically atheistic realism model. But Bhagavad Gita is not just Sankhya. Bhagavad Gita represents a bit more of an amalgam of Indian spiritualities. Sattva is pure, without impurities, and illuminating and free from sickness. It binds the soul through attachment with happiness and knowledge. Now note here, the Bhagavad Gita is saying that Sattva is still attached, that it's not in a state of moksha. And that's because attachment to happiness keeps a person bound to this reality, according to that model. Rajas is full of passion and is born out of trishna, or thirst. I think that H should be off of trishna there. It should be Trishna. I believe that's true. So Rajas is born out of thirst and attachment, out of desire. So it binds the soul through attachment with action. Remember that to be totally conscious in the Indian spiritual model, all action must cease. And, which I always find a very interesting conclusion. Tamas is the darkness and crudeness of man. It is born of ignorance and delusion. It binds the soul through recklessness, indolence, and sleep. And of course, in Sankhya's model, all of the created world, all objects in the created universe, come out of tamas, come out of ignorance and delusion. So this statement is not just making a statement about a particular type of person, but about reality itself. So Sattva is just a doorway to moksha. It's not moksha itself. Yes, it's considered to be the most holy personality in Sankhya's model, but it's still attachment, right, to happiness and knowledge. It's still a part of the ego. It's an expression of the ego. And so ultimately Sattva is still viewed negatively. The Bhagavad Gita says that one should go beyond the three gunas to attain immortality and freedom or moksha from birth, death, old age, and sorrow. There you see the model of transcendence in that spirituality. Upon death, the Sattvic person attains higher worlds. When he returns, he takes birth among pious people or in a pious family. After death, a Rajasic person remains in the middle worlds. When he is reborn, he takes birth in the family of those who are attached to actions. As for the Tamasic person, he sinks to the lowest regions on dying, and when reborn, takes birth among the ignorant and deluded. All right. Holiness according to Sankhya. Yoga, Buddhism, and other derivatives of Sankhya say reality is an illusion created out of ignorance, and that awareness of this is spiritual transformation and bliss. And self-will, aka the ego in Sankhya, keeps one trapped in suffering in the circle of life, and the remedy is transcendence. So you follow that map I put up earlier to get to moksha. You go up the map. And that's how Sattva is a kind of doorway to transcendence. When yogis eat a Sattvic lifestyle or live eat a Sattvic diet or live a Sattvic lifestyle, they're taking those steps to achieve enlightenment. Sankhya's model of enlightenment. All right, so one thing I want to say before we go into what exactly is the Sattvic diet is to just point out that the Sattvic diet is often confused with a healthy diet. But we always have to remember that the Sattvic diet wasn't created with the aim of health, but spiritual transcendence. So much of the Sattvic diet is healthy, but it wasn't created for health, and not all aspects of it are always going to be helpful for your physical life, because the Sattvic diet is created for transcendence. It's designed to help you detach from the body and to still your mind. So before you adopt the Sattvic diet, I just want to start from the outside that you have to examine your goals. What are you trying to achieve? And that will help you determine whether a Sattvic diet is suitable for you or not. Yeah, if you are you trying to become more detached? Are you trying to eliminate all desires? Are you trying to escape the cycle of birth and death? If you're not trying to do those things, then the Sattvic diet may not be for you.